welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. It is our Wednesday show, Sam. Always fun and loaded up here on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
We got Dean Blandino talking all things officiating. We got Jay Gruden coming in. Jay Gruden's going to come in. We're going to break down some of the year two quarterbacks. Bryce Young, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, all sorts of other fun stuff. We got the mailbag. We got all sorts of people that emailed some questions and bets and all sorts of stuff to us. So we got a great show here today.
What is that email address again, see? For
Check the Mic at the33rdteam.com.
There you go.
Do we emphasize the the?
Yeah.
The.
What we do now.
Well, it's the, but not the. The33rdteam.com. Check the mic at 33rdteam, the33rdteam.com. Send those emails, and we'll respond. This is Wednesday. It's our time to just, sit back, relax, have some fun, answer some questions, and do all that fun stuff. Tomorrow, of course, we're already into week 2. Going to be previewing week 2 of the NFL season.
Absolutely.
But first, what we're going to try to do here on Wednesday is also review Monday Night Football, because it was only 2 nights ago. Jets and 49ers. 49ers with the win, 32-19. We talked about it on YouTube exclusively, right? So if you're on YouTube, you can get our primetime instant reactions. That already came out. But if you're in audio land, it could be your first time listening to us talk Niners, Jets. Your initial reactions to that game.
The biggest thing was, I think, obviously everyone's going to want to talk about Aaron Rodgers and what did he look like coming back. I thought Rodgers looked fine. Pretty good, actually. Maybe we did definitely see, once you got him on the move, I think there was visual evidence that, this is somebody that's not what he used to be. And I don't know if that's going to be who he is going forward, or if he can bounce back from that and it's just going to take more than the year recovery for that to happen. But inside the pocket, his arm looked great. His movement within the pocket looked good. As soon as you forced him to run, that's where you started to see, okay, this is somebody that's dealt with an injury. But overall, I thought Rodgers was good. The defense got absolutely gashed by the 49ers, even without Christian McCaffrey. And, okay, even without McCaffrey, the 49ers run offense in particular, but the offense generally is one of the most imposing units in football. It's still concerning that the Jets weren't able to slow it down once they got rolling.
Yeah, so Jordan Mason was the big story for the 49ers. Comes in, and it was kind of announced last minute that Christian McCaffrey was not going to play. Mason goes 28 carries for 147 yards, and just, boy, did he run the ball extremely well. And it was kind of that throwback. Remember Shanahan and the offense? It doesn't matter who you put back there as a running back, they're going to produce. Mason did a really nice job there. And then the Jets' run defense, the benefit of being here on a Wednesday talking about this, the PFF grades are final. And as always, the PFF grades tell a great story for most games, for games of what happened. And the Jets' run defense grade of 41.3 as a team, I think, pretty well sums up they're getting gashed up front the other night.
Yeah, so, we talk all the time about how quarterback is basically the only position in the NFL important enough to move the needle in terms of wins and losses, certainly from a Vegas point spread point of view, right? Quarterback goes down, it's worth points to the spread. The spread will move. Anybody else goes down, it doesn't tend to affect it. And a lot of, we talk about Christian McCaffrey as being the unicorn, being the one guy that does make a difference at running back and everything changes, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that might be true. People will argue that when McCaffrey arrived in San Francisco, everything was better. As soon as he was listed as out, as soon as it was known that he wasn't going to be playing, line didn't move. Not one iota, did not shift at all. So even the guy that you identify as the one important running back, the one guy that makes a difference, didn't affect the line, and then you had the game that showed why. Because, when the 49ers offense works, it works regardless who the running back is.
I mean, my whole thing with McCaffrey is I think he's fantastic. He's a great player. I do believe he is a mismatch in the pass game that certain times throughout the year will show up when teams are taking away those other awesome weapons. Right. But then, they featured Deebo Samuel a bunch as a runner and in the pass game. They have guys like Jawan Jennings. People forget how good Jawan Jennings is. He'd be a potential 2 for a lot of other teams, and he's the number 3 receiver behind Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. Ayuk was a little rusty, perhaps, with less training camp under his belt. But, yeah, the Niners are just a juggernaut, man. And they look really good. Brock Purdy statistically didn't throw a touchdown, but he had a beautiful throw to Ayuk that was dropped in the end zone. I thought Purdy, outside of a couple misses here and there. I thought Purdy looked really good as well. So
I think he ended up was he PFF's highest graded quarterback of the week?
Did he end up highest?
Overall grade, yes.
Wow.
Passing grade,
I
no.
didn't know that. So yeah, I thought, so we're in this weird world where Purdy, Kyle Shanahan quarterback, is grading better than the stats. It's working the other way. It used to go the other way where the guy puts up a 72 grade with 120 passer rating, but Purdy finished 19 of 29 for 231.
This was
8 yards per attempt, no touchdowns, no picks.
You know, you hear offensive coaches sometimes talk about how they try and set things up and call, like play calling is almost like a sequence, right? You do one thing, you set up something else, that thing sets up something else, blah, blah. And it doesn't tend to work that way because plays don't always work and somebody stops something and now, well, did that set up the next thing or is that a write-off because it didn't work? This game will be like, this could go down in a coaching clinic somewhere as like everything set up the next thing, which only like it's spiraled, right? So it started off, the Jets actually ironically had a really good start to the game on defense, and then once the 49ers got that outside run established, well, now the Jets are doing weird things in terms of run fits and alignments on defense, trying to stop the outside run, right? So they're lining up on plays, even short plays, clearly cheating to the outside to try and bottle up this perimeter attack by the 49ers, leaving the middle exposed. So now the 49ers can run up the middle, and now you're trying to stop the run across the board. You're just completely lost. And now Kyle Juszczyk faking a lead block as a fullback leaks through the line, and now he's attacking you deep down the sideline as a receiving weapon. Like, they were just a step behind every step of the way. The 49ers play calling was masterful. Robert Saleh, the guy that used to coach, on this team, couldn't figure out a way of stopping it, and they were just literally one step behind throughout the entire game once this offense got rolling.
I completely agree. Of all the masterpieces that Kyle Shanahan has put together, remember last year they may have broken the Eagles. They were the first team that really exploited the Eagles before we knew that the Eagles were going to fall apart.
Right.
Really impressive. I mean, this is one of Kyle's best games, I think, from a play calling standpoint because of what you just described, right? It's like, oh, this part of the field's been attacked. Oh, now this part of the field's been attacked. Oh, they stopped this. Well, this thing's open now. Oh, look, George Kittle's open in the secondary. It was a thing of beauty. I want to shout out Dominic Pooney, the starting guard, rookie starting guard, third rounder for the Niners. Mike Renner, shout out to Mike Renner. He's late like us. Renner loved Pooney, thought he was a first-round pick.
He did.
And he looked like a first-round caliber guard through one game against the Jets. So shout out there. All right. Got no more use for Monday Night Football.
It's all done.
Because we have Dean Blandino, our weekly guest here on Wednesdays. Let's bring in Dean whenever we're ready here. And we'll talk a little trends from week one. We talked to Dean last week to preview the season. Dean, how's it going, man?
Good. How you guys doing?
Not bad.
Doing great. I don't think there's a ton of controversy coming out of week one. That seems like a good thing, right?
Yeah, that's always good. We like to, in officiating, we like to ramp up. Let's get our controversies a little bit later, like everybody else. We'll kind of wait a little bit. It's good.
You tend to save them for prime time too, right? So Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, you got to have your contested catches and crazy stuff.
Always. When I was the head of officiating at the NFL, I would say, look, there's 3 games that I don't want anything to happen in: Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night. Let it happen 1:00 on Sunday in a game that not a lot of people are watching, but unfortunately everybody's watching all the time.
That's the same strategy Kirk Cousins uses, right? Just don't be on prime time. Just do it at 1:00. Any notable trends, stats coming out of week one?
Well, I think, the league always looks at game time. And so the average game time compared to week one last year was down. We're at 3 hours, 2 minutes, 58 seconds. So the league is always shooting for that magical 3-hour window. It's not going to happen. We're never going to fit games in under 3 hours or below unless we drastically change the timing rules. But I think they'll look at that. The problem, though, when you look at game time is plays per game. And plays per game, the average number over time has been somewhere around 154, 155 plays per game. That was significantly down in week one, 148 plays per game. And that's kind of what you're right. That's what you're giving. That's what you're selling your fans are football plays. So that number below 150, look, small sample size, but that's troublesome if that continues. Points per game, pretty good, 45.8. That's a healthy number. Your average margin of victory, 10.8. Anytime you can get that close to a one-score game, that's always the goal. But passing yards were down big time, 76 per game, which was down about 20 yards from last year, week one. But the way, and I think we talked about this, week one, even into week 2 and 3, it feels like extended preseason for everybody because the ones don't play a lot in the preseason. So I think we're going to hopefully see those numbers start to trend upward as we get into the latter portion of the season.
If we go all the way back to the opening game, Baltimore, Kansas City, what did you make of the way that game started with officials really cracking down on Baltimore's offensive line alignment and then not really doing it for the rest of the game? Certainly Kansas City had a couple of plays where, Twitter's awash with people pulling up screenshots of, well, how come this wasn't called? But it didn't really, that was kind of it, right? We made the statement in the first game, and then the rest of the games weren't awash with. This wasn't like a giant push all the way through week one.
Yeah, it did feel aggressive from that crew. This hasn't changed. Formations haven't changed. And if we remember last year, week one, we were talking about they weren't calling Juwan Taylor, the right tackle for the Chiefs, for being too far back. You warn first, when it's close, and then the coach gets the warning, the player gets the warning, and then typically they correct it. To have 3 in the first quarter was a lot. I thought, 5 total in the game. I thought at least 3 of them were probably too technical. And the league, the officiating department, even sent out a memo after that to the officials and to the clubs to say, hey, here's how we're going to officiate this. They didn't want the officials to be too technical. We didn't see it as much. Although for the whole week, there were 22 called, which was high compared to last year, week one, there was only 10. So when you have 22 called in 1 week, that's a high number. I would expect that to come down as well as we head into week 2 and beyond.
I saw some former offensive linemen talking about this. What's the official rule for where the tackle can line up? And somebody highlighted like Ronnie Stanley's posture or the stance may be affecting the official. Do you think that could be an issue for officials to see? Yeah,
it could be if the lineman is too straight up, right? And so the rule is pretty simple. It's the belt line of the snapper. So you just draw a line through the midsection of the snapper, the center, and you've got to be breaking part of that plane. Typically, that's going to be the helmet. And if you're too far back, and officials are going to look for it. Look, third down, third and long, obvious passing situations. The tackle's going to try to cheat a little bit because you're in pass protection and make that end go, wider around you. So the officials are looking through that belt line, and then, like I said, I think they're gonna kind of even push that back a little bit because they don't want to be technical. But yeah, Stanley, if he's more straight up, then he's not catching that belt line, and that could certainly lead to more calls.
You want to talk kickoffs? How did the dynamic kickoff? How did that look to you, or from an officiating sense here in week one?
I think it looked good. I think a lot of people, we had this unrealistic expectation of returns. This was never going to lead to 70-80% returns. It just wasn't going to happen. When you talk about the drive start, if you're giving up an average of the 29-30 yard line, then a lot of teams are just going to kick it through the end zone and not risk injury, not risk anything, a big return, and give the opponent the ball in the 30. And I think that's what we saw to some extent. Return rate was 32.5%, which was up from last year. If you think about the entire year last year, it was under 22. And I think the league would be happy. I think the league would be happy with a 30 to 35 return rate. I think that's what they thought they were going to get last year when they added the fair catch rule. And it went down so far below that, so they felt they needed to make a drastic change this year. So, we saw a kickoff return for a touchdown. It's a football play. We're seeing more football plays than we did last year, and I think ultimately that's a good thing. But again, we don't know what the injury data is going to tell us. I think that's going to be a real driver as we get to the end of the season and what they do beyond 2024.
How much of a difference do you think it would have made if they had changed the touchback line? There was the talk that was going to be 5 yards further, and at the last minute they kind of balked on it because that would have presumably made a significant difference to the volume of kicks that are returned. And how much are they interested in that as a concept? Like, how much do they want a kick return as often as possible?
I think they're definitely interested. There's no question, if you move the ball out to the 35, then less teams are just going to kick it into the end zone, and then you're going to have more returns. I think I think the injury data is going to tell us a lot, and whether we go to the 35 for 2025. I think if you don't have a high rate of injury on this play, then I think they consider it. If the injury rate is anywhere near what it was on the traditional kickoff, then I don't think they're gonna want more returns, and so I think that's going to be the real driver. But no question, if you move it out to the 35, less teams are going to be comfortable just kicking it into the end zone, because the 35, I mean, that's significant in terms of field position to start a drive.
I want to follow up on one thing that you said earlier about the passing stats being down, because I put a tweet out this week about it. It was the lowest passing yard total at least since 2010, and last year was second lowest. It was the passing touchdowns just a few years ago were at 61 in week one. It was down at 34, 35. This week was the lowest total again since 2010. Do you feel like the NFL wants more? So QBs are running more. That's part of the longer game and shorter plays, right? Do you feel like the NFL at some point is going to want more passing, is going to want, like, hey, go emphasize illegal contact more, or whatever it may have been in the past?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. When you look at the popularity of the NFL, and it goes back to one of the most significant rules changes, the illegal contact rule change in the mid-'70s. I mean, defenses, they were just mauling receivers off the line, big defensive backs, Mel Blount, those types of guys. And the passing game was just stagnant, and the game wasn't as popular. They opened it up with the illegal contact rule. We saw an explosion of passing in the 80s, and the game is where it is today. So there's no question from an officiating standpoint, yes, you have to look at, are we officiating illegal contact? Are we officiating defensive holding, that contact downfield? And you could see something like that if the competition committee says, hey, the correlation between our fouls called are down in these areas and our passing yards are down, we're going to have to tighten that up. But I think, like you said, there's other factors beyond officiating. You know, is it more running? Is it the schemes? Is it the first-year quarterbacks, those types of things? So I think all of it contributes to it, but certainly illegal contact and defensive holding is something the competition committee could emphasize if these numbers stay where they are, which are, like you said, historically low.
So I get the competition committee kind of adapting rules and making adjustments year to year. It makes a lot of sense. Is there a conscious attempt, like during the season, to manipulate the game with officiating? Like, if we notice something is skewing different than it's been the past few years, something's down, something's not as good as it normally is there like an in-season conscious, okay, we're going to change the way we officiate this to try and boost this back up because the game has changed this year for some reason?
There can be, sure. You never want to make major changes in season. You want to try to be as consistent as possible. But certainly if it's something related to player safety, you might have to make a correction. But again, if you're not calling certain areas of the game to where the rule book and where the competition committee expects it to be called, then yeah, you can make those corrections. You want to make sure if you are doing those things, you communicate that not only to the officials, but to the club. So everybody's aware of, okay, they're going to call this tighter or whatever it may be. So those things can happen. And again, I would expect the passing yards to go up. But if you look at the last couple of seasons, we are not where we were, like you said, even 5-6 years ago. And that's a big part of the popularity and what makes the game so exciting. So it's definitely something that the league has to continue to look at.
All right, last thing, Dean. Monday Night Football, there was a play I noticed immediately, and I know Peyton Manning noticed immediately, where Jordan Mason, because I tweeted this thing out and people were looking at the receiver motion, and I was like, no, Jordan Mason's moving before the snap out of the backfield, moving forward. I was joking about the CFL motion. Was this just a missed false start, or did the Niners find some kind of edge here?
No, that's a missed call. You can, so any backfield player, any player that's in the backfield can be in motion, but you can't be going toward the line of scrimmage, right? You can have one player in motion lateral to the line of scrimmage, and he's clearly going forward. So you could call that illegal motion, or if it's quick and abrupt, you shut it down and make it a false start. So it's a foul. I just think the officials missed it. It was so close to the snap, but that's not something, teams are going to try to gain an advantage, but that's something the officials should look at and make sure that they're not letting teams get away with.
And then really quick, can you explain the rule, the Garrett Wilson play where he stepped out of bounds and his heel hit first and his toe landed out of bounds? Jets fans were complaining about that. What's the official rule on that second foot?
I hate this rule.
Sam hates it, but
it so much.
I know. So it's part of it's a concept, we call it toe heel or heel toe. So if you're taking a normal step, right, and there's no drag, there's no delay, it's just a normal step, then the entire foot has to be in bounds. So if the heel comes down a split second first inbounds, and then in the normal stepping motion, the toes come down out of bounds, that's out of bounds. And that's there for the officials to consistently officiate that play, because in real time, it's going to be impossible. And I know we have replay, but not every play goes to replay. Not every play is challenged. So for the on-field officials and the consistency, that's the philosophy, the concept of heel, toe, toe, heel. If the entire foot isn't in bounds, it's out of bounds in that situation.
My take is if you have at any point, if there's a part of your foot down or, elbow, whatever the thing is that's putting you in the end zone, if there's a part of it down at any point with none of it out of bounds, it's in, right? It's like if you can toe drag your way to a touchdown, you should be able to do it backwards, and then when your heel comes down, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it's the Isaiah Likely play, right? I mean, that who would not have wanted? Me and my son were screaming because we're like, Harbaugh's going for 2.
Yeah, he's going for 2.
This is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, and look, if these passing yards don't get to where they should be, maybe they will make that change. But that's the rule right now.
We'll get you on the competition committee, Sam.
That's
they
what
get
we're
the rule
talking,
of cool too. Isaiah Likely was the rule of cool. Cool play, cool 2-point conversion coming up. Just let it stand.
I always say that. Look, I say that the rule of cool is a great way of saying it, because look, if you've got a big offensive lineman doing something cool, I think we had to play a couple, that recovers a fumble and he dives into the end zone, and then they overturned it and put him down short of the goal. I'm like, no, give him the touchdown. Let's go.
Well, that was the Robert Hunt play, right? It's one of the coolest plays in NFL history, and it doesn't count because he can't catch the ball and advance it.
Yeah.
He scored one of the greatest touchdowns in NFL history, and we just have to pretend it didn't happen.
Can't just throw screens to the right guard, Sam.
Because apparently it's against the rules.
Dean, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Always love the insight every week, man.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks.
You. We'll get you on the competition committee.
Yeah. I think I'm
cool and the heel toe.
Yeah, I think I'm a voice that's been missing for some time.
Would you get some rugby tackling in there? You'll teach them how to tackle rugby.
Yeah,
style.
well, the tackling I don't know what I'd do to change NFL tackling. I mean, I would start thinking about some player safety measures from rugby that we could adapt. Rugby's got very strict tackling rules now. Like
leather helmets.
You can't do a lot in terms of tackling.
All right, we got a couple. Jay Gruden's coming up, 11:05-ish Eastern. Leading up to that, we got a couple stories to talk about. Let's start with Justin Fields and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Preparing to start again. I believe there are Steelers beat writers who still believe that Russell Wilson is QB1.
Yeah.
But should the Steelers roll with Justin Fields after he had a pretty nice week in week 1?
Yeah, we talked about it coming out of that game, right? That he definitely advanced his cause and went in the right direction towards a starting job. I don't know if this is an indication that that's the case, that hey, he feels so good week 1, he's the starter now. I think they're just being particularly cautious with Russell Wilson. Maybe this is an audition, though, for okay, that was impressive. Let's see it again. He'd do it again. We'll give you the job. Somebody was tweeting, I forget who it was, so I can't credit, sadly. Last year, Justin Fields had a 335-yard passing game, 9.6 yards per attempt, and it was against the defense that is coming up. Now, it was that defense while they were in a historical low period of ineptitude. I'm not sure it's a fair expectation, but it is interesting that they're spooling him up again against the defense that he absolutely wrecked last year.
That is the Broncos.
Correct.
And so you're losing the potential Russell Wilson revenge game here.
True.
If Fields goes. Warren Sharp also had the tweet that showed the what looked like a strike zone where a pitcher did not throw a strike.
So I had that as well, but I didn't have the pitching caption, which apparently was the key to make it go, viral.
Warren tagged it a little bit better than you did.
Yeah.
Don't always love the way he tags things and put positions.
It's unfortunate that I didn't think of that tag, because there would have been a Palazzolo reference in there as well. It was a joke just waiting to be hit.
Here's Steve
and I
pitching.
missed it.
Yeah, not a strike thrower. The point is, the whole middle of the field was completely wide open.
Right.
Speaking of,
to a preposterous degree, all of it.
Here's where we keep going off the rails. But passing chart, fun. Did you see Josh Norris's tweet with Aaron Rodgers?
No.
Everything was to the left. His entire passing chart was to the left.
The anti-Trubisky?
Well, and he put a picture of Aaron Rodgers with an eye patch on his right eye. It was really well done. Yeah. It's like you can't, so I always come with a Zoolander reference. He's not an ambi-turner when he's not an ambi-thrower. No. Rodgers was all throwing left. But yeah, the Fields thing, if they had lost and not moved the ball fairly effectively, Fields' inability to throw the ball to the middle of the field would probably be more of a story, especially given how much Arthur Smith wants to do that. So it is, it's fascinating because Russell Wilson has a similar penchant for throwing outside the numbers rather than to the middle. But as we said on Monday morning's review show, I thought Arthur Smith did a fantastic job. I thought the game plan for Fields with play action, pocket movement, throwing outside the numbers, the throwback before the half, using Fields as a design runner, I thought it was really well done by the Steelers. I know they didn't score a touchdown. They kicked 6 field goals, but I thought that was well done. And I'm more interested in seeing Fields for another couple weeks than I am seeing Russ come back.
Yeah, generally,
from a fan perspective.
Right. Generally, I don't have a ton of interest in seeing Russell Wilson within this offense. We've seen very little of it, but haven't been blown away by what we've seen. So I still think there's potential there in Justin Fields. I don't think he's a write-off in terms of being able to be a good NFL starter going forward. Maybe he will never be elite, but I think he can be dangerous, dynamic, and effective, particularly for a team like Pittsburgh, whose defense looks like it's going to be back. TJ Watt wrecking shop, the interior destroying the Falcons. I think the Steelers don't need an elite quarterback to still be a very good team. So I'm absolutely for giving Fields another week to see if he can repeat the trick and maybe winning the job.
And then I want to talk Los Angeles Rams a little bit here. And Puka Nakua's injury and just all the injuries that the Rams have. Puka Nacua goes out early in the Sunday night football game. We see Cooper Kupp with 14 catches on 21 targets. Cooper Kupp being the high-volume receiver. Puka's injury and how this affects the Rams, their next couple receivers. We saw a big play from Tyler Johnson, year 4 Minnesota receiver, maybe coming good in year 4 here. Tyler Johnson, Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Whittington, maybe fighting for targets with Puka Nacua out. But I think even as concerning, if not more, the fact that we're talking O-line shuffles for the Rams similar to 2 years ago when seemingly every week they had a different combination up front.
Yeah, not just shuffles, but that line has been destroyed in terms of the personnel. It's wrecked. They're down 3 starters already, making various changes across the line, players going on IR. They are brutal performance from the Rams in terms of injuries. They played really well in the face of those, but man, that team has been beat up hard and they're only a week into the season.
Let's remember how important this is. Friend, it's not even friend of the show, Twitter friend, Ben Baldwin, his famous chart. For years, he's been charting the McVay Rams offense, PFF pass blocking grade against EPA. Right.
It's insane how tightly correlated the performance of the Rams offense is with their offensive line.
And for whatever reason, we've always talked about the Shanahan offenses being able to overcome bad pass blocking. And I know they came from the same Mike Shanahan tree, ventured off, but for whatever reason, the
theoretically they're very close cousins.
Yes, they're cousins. But the Shanahan cousins, Kyle's group, they've overcome bad pass blocking. We've seen it with Tua. We've seen it with Brock Purdy. We've seen it with C.J. Stroud.
Yeah,
they've hidden it. They've overcome. And this is again PFF pass blocking grade. The Niners had one of the lowest grades in the NFL last year as a team, pass blocking, and one of the most efficient offenses. But McVay's offenses have not overcome this thing. And so now if they're in a position where center's out, Havenstein hopefully is back at right tackle. They're on to left tackle 3 right now. If they have to deal with that all season and Puka Nacua, you saw how limited they were with Stafford having to get the ball out quick and not being able to push the ball down the field.
It puts an absolute ton of pressure on Matthew Stafford, right? Like he now has to overcome all this by himself, basically. Sure, you can coach around it, or you can play call around it, try and get the ball out faster, et cetera, but this is going to be like those throws that he was making, where it's like, how did he even see that guy with 3 players in his face to loft it over the top and make a throw? That's going to be his September. His first month of the season is going to be making throws like that, because his offensive line has been absolutely decimated.
They have the Rams this week. They are the Rams.
Yes.
They have the Cardinals this week.
Okay, well, that'll help.
And so, we've been pretty low on the Cardinals' defensive front. They didn't get a ton of pressure against the Bills the other day, except when Josh Allen held the ball too long. But 49ers in week 3, we've seen the Rams at times when they felt like they couldn't block the 49ers, when they had Jared Goff at quarterback and they literally ran a screen every single play. Mm-hmm. Every single pass play was either a screen or a draw, right? It was like, hey, we can't pass protect. Let's not even try. We'll see if they're back any better by week 3, but they have the Niners, the Bears with their up-and-coming defensive front. They've added some depth there, the Packers. So something to keep an eye on. My point is, I'm as concerned about the pass protection as I am losing Puka Nacua.
Yeah, maybe more so. I mean, we've seen that they can get by without one of their 2 really good wide receivers. They've done it. It's usually been Cooper Kupp, obviously, but I think they're fine without Puka Nacua. But that offensive line, like the Ben Baldwin chart, as you said, the Shanahan group seems to be able to not just get by or overcome bad offensive lines, but actually hide them really well and make it so that they don't exist, negate the impact of a bad offensive line. Whereas the McVay group seems to immediately struggle the second their offensive line falls apart. And it's more complicated with Kirk Cousins, obviously, but look at the Falcons week 1. That offensive line got wrecked, and suddenly the offense falls apart. Like, that appears to be a feature of this scheme.
All right, we're going to get to Jay Gruden in just a few minutes, but first, it's the best time of the year. Football's back. We're talking NFL Sundays, college football Saturdays, the glorious grind of fantasy football lineups. That's where your inner GM comes alive, setting that perfect fantasy roster, screaming at your TV, making the last-minute waiver moves that either make you a hero or the guy that everyone ridicules in the group chat, Sam. But listen, while you're over here making sure your fantasy team is dialed in, don't let your personal grooming become the guy that gets left on the bench. Let's be honest, nobody wants to fumble their grooming routine. That's where Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0 Ultra comes in, acting as your all-in-one grooming playbook. From keeping things sharp down below with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra to taking care of those rogue nose and ear hairs with the Weed Whacker 2.0. This is the lineup that if you keep looking and feeling like a champ, it'll keep you there on and off the field. This is it. Our friends over at Manscaped join the over 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for the rest of this NFL season by heading over to manscaped.com. Use the code MIC20, MIC20, for 20% off plus free shipping. You'll be drafting the real MVP of grooming this season over at Manscaped. Right, Sam?
Yep, let's go. I broke out. I did last time. I was, doing the thing that you're not supposed to. No, I didn't trim it. Oh. But I was doing the thing that you're not supposed to do, right? Where you endorse a product without having used it that day. This morning, I had the brush and the beard conditioner. So didn't trim it, but conditioned and brushed the beard this morning with the Manscaped stuff. So good stuff.
So it's 20% off plus free shipping. Code is Mike20 at manscapes.com. That's 20% off free shipping with the code Mike20, MIC20. Manscapes.com. Stay on top of your grooming game and be ready for anything the season throws your way. You know who wasn't ready for what the season threw their way was Bryce Young.
No.
So we're going to bring Jay Gruden in here in a minute, talks a little Bryce Young, Will Levis. We're ready for Jay whenever. I'm not. How do you throw to a guest? I don't know. We're still learning on the fly here.
Well, there you go.
There he is.
Good. Done.
Hello.
Hi, Jay.
Hello.
How are we doing?
How's it going, sir?
Welcome to Check the Mic. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I feel like I'm in the picture, not in the picture. Here we go. I'm new to this as well, so bear with me.
Look, we're all going to learn together. Yeah, just try to stay square. But we're really here to talk ball, and particularly these year 2 quarterbacks. I want to start with Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick last year. We were kind of hoping that year 2 was going to look a little different. Wasn't great so far in week 1.
No, he's got a new coach, new coordinator. It has a little bit to do with it, I think. My concern with Bryce is he looks small. He plays small. His arm talent does not show up on tape. His decision making hasn't been that great. He's 13 for 30 for 160 yards, a couple picks and 4 sacks. The weapons around him are very, I don't know. They don't have a tight end presence. Chuba Hubbard's a good back, but he's not really a back out of the backfield type guy.
They got a rookie receiver, Xavier Legette, Dante Johnson, Adam Thielen. I just don't know where they turn. They don't have a great roster to really help this kid out, and he's not a good enough quarterback of creating on his own to carry a team on his own with his athletic ability, with his arm talent. So a lot has to go right, and nothing has gone right for him since he's been a starter. So a lot of problems in Carolina, not just on offense either. Their defense was putrid as well.
Yeah. The biggest sort of superpower that Bryce Young had in college was anticipation. Like, he threw over the middle with anticipation incredibly well. He was putting the ball at the spot that the receiver was going to get to better than, any quarterback I could remember coming out for a while, and better than the other quarterbacks that had come out of that Alabama system, Tua, Mac Jones. None of that is evident right now. And that first interception was like the exact opposite of that. It was terrible anticipation, placement, everything was bad. How come that aspect of his game has completely evaporated in addition to he looks tiny?
Yeah, well, you look at that play, and there's no separation either by the receiver. That ball had to be in one spot only. He missed a spot, and it was picked. The other part of the equation was in week one, they had the ball for 6 plays, and they were down 17-0 after 6 plays. So that kind of throws you for a loop when you're trying to call plays and execute your offense. But, yeah, I don't understand it either. I have not seen anything so far in his first year and so much body of work that really warrants him being a starting quarterback in the NFL. The issue is Canales and Idzik, the coordinator. They have no ties to him. They're new there, so they didn't draft this kid. So I don't know how long this leash is going to be for him, especially with a veteran quarterback like Andy Dalton, who's had a lot of success in the National Football League right behind him. So hopefully he gets better. It's early in the season, obviously, but they played the New Orleans Saints. It's not like they played the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens. Now this is a team that they had a great opportunity to win, and they got blown out. So it's a big concern up there in Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a team building standpoint, you're 1 week in, and the Panthers might be thinking, we need to be scouting college quarterbacks more than we had anticipated. Like they may have come out of camp excited about Bryce Young, and maybe he will turn it around. But boy, that's rough in week one.
They have so many other issues too. They need to scout defensive linemen. They need to scout corners, linebackers, receivers, tight ends. For God's sakes, offensive linemen. They did better doing their offensive line. They got Hunt in there, and so their interior offensive line is a lot better than it was last year, which should help Bryce in the future. But they got to get some kind of balance and separation at receiver for him to have a chance.
We'll get you in here doing our Panthers draft needs when it's draft time. You can just list them all out.
All of the above.
One last thing on the height thing, as a former coach of quarterbacks and play caller and everything. How much is the height thing when we talk draft time? Is it overblown? Or in this case, what does Bryce Young need to overcome his lack of height? Why are you always looking for a 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" type of quarterback?
Because they can see. These guys are big up in front of them. And a lot of times when that pocket condenses, these guys can't see. You see Kyler Murray all the time. The thing about Kyler is he's an exceptional athlete, so he can escape with his legs. Bryce is not that good of an athlete, in my opinion, that he can really escape and move around in the pocket. Drew Brees is a shorter quarterback, but you saw him stand tall on his toes all the time where he could see up over the line. Bryce looks small. He plays small. He plays in a crouch position. So it's going to be hard for him to see in the future. These guys that are I've seen 6'3" guys struggle seeing because they crouch down and think they got to throw with their legs and all that stuff. The better quarterbacks are all standing tall. You watch Tom Brady throw. You watch all the good quarterbacks throw. They're standing tall so they can see over the line, read through their progressions, read the cover 2, cover 3, whatever it might be, anticipate throws, and are ready to throw. And Bryce just hasn't been able to show that type of ability yet in the pocket.
It's only, the first game of year two. Year two was where we had a lot of excitement or optimism for Bryce Young. Could he take a big step forward this year? Do we see anything yet that makes us think that he can turn it around and justify, being the franchise quarterback they thought he was?
I've seen nothing so far, and I'm not there in the building. I'm not at practice every day, and I'm not at training camp or OTA, so maybe they see something there every day, the arm talent, the accuracy, the anticipation that you got to have. It just hasn't translated into a game yet. Not saying it won't. Hopefully it will. They'll get it figured out. Legette's got to play better. Obviously, Dante Johnson's got to play better. Thielen's got to get some separation. They all have to play better around him. There's no doubt about it for a quarterback to have a chance. But I haven't seen anything yet, not to say that he won't.
Right. All right, let's stay on the negative side here. Let's go. Will Levis and the Titans. Jay, I'm watching Levis throughout the day on Sunday against the Bears, and last year I thought he was, fun from a fan perspective, unbelievably aggressive. But turnovers and big plays both from Will Levis. I thought they did a nice job of reeling him in at first, and then he throws what ended up essentially becoming the game-ending pick six. Just a terrible decision. What are your thoughts on Will Levis, and how would you handle a quarterback like him who seemingly just wants to make big plays at all times?
Well, he's a great competitor. He does not like to fail at all. You can see that. He got away with one of his little on the way to the ground shovel passes, getting out of his hands and avoiding a sack earlier in the game. And then obviously later in the game, he did it again and threw it right to the defense for a touchdown. The thing about the Tennessee Titans right now, if you're coaching the Titans, they have a good defense now. I'm telling you that. Harold Landry can rush. Simmons can still rush. They have an elite corner over there. So they have a very good defense. Ernest Jones played a hell of a game at linebacker. They're going to keep you in games. The one thing you can't do as a quarterback is make those mistakes, those turnovers, those plays that impact the game in a negative way. He did that twice, had another fumble in the game. So this is something that they have to really challenge Will on in the future to protect the football. It's okay to punt. It's okay to kick a field goal. We don't have to score every time we have the ball. So that's something that you'll have to reel him in on. And then cater to his strengths. His strengths is he's a physical kid. They had one designed quarterback run for about a gain of 15 on a quarterback little counter to the weak side, which is excellent. And those are things you're going to have to do with them to have success on offense. Forget the injury possibilities with them. This guy's a bull in a china shop. Let him get in there, get physical, and make some plays. And if it doesn't work out, you got a good, capable backup in Mason Rudolph.
How do you structure an offense around a quarterback? Because, generally when people describe quarterbacks, you want to hear terms like surgical, like precision, leadership. And the words that come to the mind when you're talking about Levis are like maniac, psychopath, lunatic. How do you create an offense around this guy who's just playing with this reckless, crazy style that a lot of times is getting him into trouble?
Yeah, you're right. That's a very difficult thing to coach, so you have to try to cater to him somehow. The issue is they have two outstanding receivers that can really go get it, and Hop and obviously Ridley, and they're probably getting frustrated a little bit. So, when you have a quarterback throw 32 times for 127 yards, Ridley and Hop are out there going, what the hell's going on here? I don't want to see another quarterback design run. I don't want to go out there and dig out a safety and a power play for the quarterback. These guys want to run and you guys want to get open, but this is not Will Levis style. Now, he has the ability to pull it out, do some play actions, and launch it. He missed one, I think, to Ridley, who was wide open, was underthrown drastically. But these are plays. You're going to have to manufacture some deep ball plays to Ridley or Hop a couple times a game. The quarterback runs. But most importantly, you have to keep him out of third down and long because that's where they become unfunctionable.
Do you end up trying to just embrace that? Like you're saying, we have to let him chuck it down the field because you don't want him checking down. You don't want all underneath stuff for Levis. You don't want to rein him in too much. You want to lean into that aggressiveness, but also not with the recklessness, right? That balance.
Yeah, and that's hard for young quarterbacks. Hey, be aggressive. No, don't be aggressive. You might throw a pick. No, be aggressive. You can't give them two. You got to let the quarterback play. But when plays do break down, the quarterback play calling can be aggressive with them. I get that. But when plays break down, this is where Will Levis has to make great decisions for your franchise. He's got to understand he's got the entire franchise on his back, right? When he's scrambling out there and he shovel passes it to the defense for a touchdown and gives up the game. I mean, these are plays and games you don't get back. The AFC South is going to come down to a game or two, quite possibly. Being the 7 seed might be the difference in 9 and 8 and 8 and 9. This is a huge game for them. And when you lose games like this because of boneheaded decisions by your quarterback, is a tough pill to swallow. But he'll make some good plays in the future. He'll run over some linebackers, make some excitement, but over the long haul, I don't know if he's a good enough passer to really rely on him in that regard. He's got to be more of a running type quarterback, play action guy, throw some screens out there, and take an occasional shot.
One thing that I noticed from just my amateur eye looking at him was he seemed to be erratic, I guess is the word, in the pocket, where he would just lurch wildly in a random direction, not necessarily because of pressure coming from one side, but just completely veer off his point and cause himself problems, because that offensive line's already not the best line in the world. Now you're running away from the leverage of blockers and just causing some of the problems.
I've seen so many young quarterbacks in the first week of the season step into pressure. Everybody, they want to step up and they feel like they got to avoid, they got to move, and they move right into a 3 technique rushing up the field. These guys got to be aware of the pocket and the presence and what these linemen are trying to do and where they're trying to protect and where that pocket is. Obviously, there'll be times where you have to move off your spot, but you got to try to hold in there as long as you can and read the play and get the ball out of your hands with some anticipation. And a lot of these young guys are having trouble doing that. They're getting off their first read, they're looking at the pressure, and they're running into pressure, and then they're trying to escape and make big plays. And the big plays are not out there on some of these scramble drills. Patrick Mahomes makes it look real easy, but it's not real easy for the rest of the guys.
All right, I want to stay in the AFC South, talk a little Anthony Richardson, one of the more fascinating stat lines you'll ever see. 9 of 19 on Sunday for 212, 2 touchdowns. I think one of the best throws I've ever seen. I don't know about you, Jay, but that was an unbelievable first bomb that he threw to Alec Pierce for a touchdown. But what do you make of Anthony Richardson, and how would you work around the skill set that Anthony Richardson's bringing to the table?
This guy's an interesting guy now. He's powerful in all phases of the game, just power. I mean, he can throw it, he can run it. He's an interesting guy. He only played 4 games last year, obviously, we know that, but his arm strength and arm talent is unbelievable. Now, he's a little wild. He's not the most accurate guy in the world. He's going to miss some throws, some head scratchers, some flat routes wide open. He might throw it in the dirt or throw it over the guy's head, hit a cheerleader in the back of the head. But this is a guy you want to work with, I think. I think there's a lot of things you can do. When you line up with him and Jonathan Taylor next to each other, the running game should be extraordinary. And I envision them being the number 1, number 2 team in the NFL rushing the football when it's all said and done. Use that to your advantage. And then obviously his ability to move and do some of the zone reads, the play actions, the bootlegs. But you're right. The throw that he threw 65 yards in the air, double clutched it from I've never seen anything like it. So he's talented as hell, but he's still young. And I think he's got an excellent football coach working with him who understands him. And they're going to do some great things in Indianapolis this year, for sure, next couple of years.
It was interesting, like week 1, I think we got the answer to the question of, did last year scare them away from using him as a physical runner, as part of that run game? Last year was almost worst case scenario because multiple injuries, including a shoulder injury, shuts him down for the year. Now you're like, well, can we even use him like that, or do we need to change what he is? And late in this game, they're calling plays that have him running over people in the run game. That's still going to be part of who Anthony Richardson is as a quarterback.
I think you have to. He's so talented in that regard. He's not quite ready to become just a drop back type quarterback. You have to utilize his strengths, and his strengths right now are overwhelmingly lean towards the side of him being an athlete and a runner. The passing will come with time, with more footwork work, more anticipation, seeing routes, seeing coverages, understanding concepts. He's still a young, very, very young to this position now. So it's going to take him time in the passing game. But what he can do at a very high level is anything you want in the running game.
He is really young as a quarterback. He did not play much at Florida. Just from the start-wise, snap-wise, obviously missed last year. And of all the inexperienced quarterbacks that have come in, like a Trey Lance, we always use that Trey Lance example. Like Richardson's shown way more than those guys have shown. But to your point too, Jay, like he could have thrown for 350 yards. He missed 2 wide-open touchdowns the other day as well. So he's 9 for 19, still hits all these massive completions. He's also really athletic. So when Josh Allen improved his accuracy by, say, year 3 in the league, do you think he has that in him to improve his footwork? Because like you said, I don't think he's misreading coverages at times. I mean, a little bit, but he just straight misses throws. Can he fix that? Have you seen young quarterbacks be able to fix that over time?
Well, Josh Allen still missing throws too, but what Josh Allen does is overcome it by making some big plays, 6 or 7 plays that no other quarterback can make in the NFL, running the football and dodging people and then launching it 35, 40 yards down the field. Anthony can do all that stuff. You're going to have to live with the fact that he's going to miss some throws. He's never going to be accurate 75% passer unless you throw all bubble screens. Down the field passes, he's always going to be between 50 and 60%. You're just hoping that the big plays you can create because of the threat of the run, people have to bring safeties down, and you're going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage out there with Adonis Mitchell and Pierce, who beat him one time. So those are when you have to take advantage of the big plays, and he can hit those. If he can hit 2 or 3 of those a game, that's 14 points, and then you run the ball, that's another 6, 10, 15 points. You're looking at 30 points, completing 9 balls. That's what they did Sunday against Houston.
Yeah, I mean, Richardson's going to be one of the most fascinating QBs to watch in the coming years here. So, Jay, appreciate it, man. That was great. It was nice talking QBs. So let's do it again sometime.
Anytime you guys want. I appreciate you having me on.
All right,
Jay.
thanks, Jay.
All right.
That was good.
Yeah.
Good to discuss.
It's another
perspective.
Another perspective that is not kind to poor old Bryce Young.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of optimism.
Your interviewing skills are getting better and better, and you got the straight up, like, have you seen anything? Have you seen anything?
Right. Anything
No.
at all. Not yet. Maybe it'll come, but no.
We both said no last year. Like, there was actually nothing to be terribly excited about. And I think the point that he's making, the height thing, again, it's overrated if you're playing in a way that overcomes it, like a Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield finding a way to do it, Drew Brees, of course. But yeah, like Tua early in his career, we always said, looked overwhelmed from a traits perspective, and that's what I'm seeing from Bryce Young right now. Overwhelmed from an NFL traits perspective.
Yeah, and it also, I mean, this was something we said before. It's not that the height thing is not real, right? It's obviously a thing that a guy that's 5'10" can see less of the field than somebody who's 6'5", right? It's just physics. It's obvious. There's a perspective that's completely different. The question is there a way of overcoming it? And that can be physically with, Kyler Murray running around, Russell Wilson running around to extend plays. It can be the Drew Brees style of thing that he talked about, where Brees was constantly playing like bolt upright on his toes. So he played like a guy that was 6'2" as opposed to 5'10", like Kyler or like Bryce Young. Or I think there's also, can you overcome it with scheme, the way Miami does, right? Where that offensive line's not great, but they do a lot of quick stuff. They get the ball out of Tua's hands really quickly before the offensive line can collapse on him. But there's also that thing of like, the other way you could potentially combat it is if you have an amazing interior offensive line that simply doesn't move backwards, well, now he's got more room, right? You're not collapsing in around him. But I think my point is it's a problem that becomes magnified a lot quicker if your offensive line isn't amazing. Now, they've upgraded it, but that offensive line is still not an elite unit. And if it's starting to collapse, like the pocket is getting pushed on him, it's a way bigger problem for Bryce Young than it is for somebody who's 6'2", 6'5", whatever, who can deal with that. The second it starts to collapse in on Bryce Young, you can see he can't do anything right now.
All right, Sam, I want to get into some of the stuff we've been seeing trending on Twitter, some of the discussions you and I have had with fans over the last couple of days. I know one of the discussions we've been having is one of our favorite guys to analyze and break down here. Travon Walker, the edge rusher from the Jacksonville Jaguars, comes out of Sunday with 2 sacks per the NFL, 1 sack per PFF.
Are they still giving him the 2?
I don't know if they gave him the second one. PFF, I talked to people there. They said they're not going to match the NFL. I don't know if the NFL changed the Tua slide
I'm just going to check that.
behind the line of scrimmage or not. PFF said they're not going to match the NFL with that one. Sometimes most of the time they'll match it. But Travon Walker had 1 outstanding sack.
Still has 2.
He has 2. So he had 1 outstanding sack against the Dolphins, 1 kind of gimme. Your thoughts on Travon and some of the discussions we've had over these last couple days?
Yeah, somebody was tweeting at me yesterday that was sort of saying, PFF has had this axe to grind against Travon Walker ever since the draft, where we at the time were saying Aiden Hutchinson was way better than Travon Walker. It's a no-brainer. Why would you ever consider not drafting Hutchinson over Walker? The Jags go the other way. They make Travon Walker the top pick. Aiden Hutchinson goes to the next pick and has become a superstar. Travon Walker has not been. But he's also been one of these guys whose statistics have kind of skewed in a different direction than maybe his overall play level, which I think hurts that or helps that perception that there's a disconnect there. So this guy was sort of saying he's become a way better player, blah, blah. So I was like, all right, I'll go through and just watch all of his snaps, see what the deal is. And you watch his snaps. The splash plays that he made were great. I mean, that sack was amazing. Like, he absolutely jacked up Austin Jackson from like under his chest pad, put him on roller skates, ends up running right through him and then launching himself over the top and grabbing the quarterback and finishing the play, making a sack. He had a couple of nice plays as well elsewhere. But there's also quite a lot of bad in there. And for 3 or 4 nice plays, he played 52 snaps. That's a lot of playing time for like somebody who's a supreme athlete like him. That is a lot of opportunities to make plays, to make splash plays, and to only come out of the game with 3 or 4 of them is not a good return. Now, I think it's fair to say Miami, we talked just before, the Bryce Young thing. Miami does have a lot of quick game, a lot of stuff that doesn't facilitate itself, lend itself to a defensive lineman making plays. Like, that's the whole point. So he's definitely behind the 8 ball a little bit there. But still, 52 plays to come out of it with 3 or 4 splash plays is not a great return. And that's before you get to the negative. Like, there was a tweet out there that said he had the second best run stop rate or something of any defensive lineman in week 1. I think that's kind of disingenuous because he barely faced the run in week 1. Like, that's part of that. He had 14 snaps against the run, of which he made 2 stops. So that's a really good return. But it's not necessarily, like, it doesn't scale. If he played double the amount of run defense plays, would he have made double the amount of defensive stops, or did he simply take one of those away and it's
just a small sample size
right,
stat?
Exactly.
That came from ESPN too. I think it doesn't actually match PFF, but go ahead.
And then the other stat they had from this was that he had one of the highest double team rates in the league, but that was presented without context.
No, but that was the tweet was, here's his run stop percentage or whatever ESPN calls it, and he was doubled the most. I read it as on running plays, that he was doubled, that he had like a 46% double team rate on running plays, which is like, okay, it was 14 plays, and you don't double team in the run game based off the player. It's more of a scheme thing.
But even,
I don't think it was as a pass rusher.
I'm not even interested. But my point being, what it doesn't do is give you any indication of how he performed on those double team plays. So let's assume that both you and I are correct, and we read it the same, and the double team rate was against the run.
Yeah, I see the 2 plays where he got wrecked.
Right. Multiple of those double teams were him getting driven off the line when half of the double team was a tight end, right? So he's got a tackle and a tight end driving him 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. That's a bad play. Just because he was like, it's being presented as a good thing. He was double teamed here. It's like, yeah, and it worked. The double team annihilated him. So, again, you watch him play, and the athleticism, his physical ability is incredible. Like, it jumps off the tape. You immediately say, this guy is a special athlete and capable of doing some amazing things. I also think he will be better this season than his PFF grade for that game, which is 49, because like, there was one play where he tossed the guy aside on a block, and it didn't go anywhere because, the play's already done, right? It's a quick game thing. That's the kind of play where, against a different team, he's going to be a factor on that play because he tossed his guy aside and was able to actually impact the play later on because of how it unfolded. So I think overall he will be better than a 49 grade this year, but he's not an impact playmaker right now, even if his numbers are skewing in that direction.
Yeah, I'm seeing more of those freaky good plays from Travon. What you mentioned in the run game, he was blowing off the ball on one play that went for 14 yards, blowing off the ball for another play that went for 6, right past his gap.
That was the other thing.
Even if ESPN's right, if you're highlighting the stops that he made, well, this is where the reason why we're still going to use PFF is because I think it's good. And it does a nice job highlighting the negative plays. He got blown off the ball a couple times, and the PFF grade captures that.
That was the final point I forgot to make on that double team thing, is that, like, not only did he get run off the ball like 5 yards, but the run went behind that. Like, it was actually a central part of those significant gains for the Miami offense was a tight end as part of a double team driving Travon Walker off the ball. So you can't present that as a positive thing. Travon Walker was double teamed a lot. Yeah. And it took him out of the play and created big plays.
Look, I can assure you there's no agenda from those people at PFF. I can assure you that there's no agenda in the grading.
If for no other reason, then we were largely pushing that agenda as Hutchinson over Walker, and neither of us work there anymore.
Yeah, so it is what it is. I'm just fascinated by him because it's one of the most interesting picks of all time because he's such a good athlete that needed work as a football player. And the one really good measure of down-to-down production in the NFL is the PFF grade, and that doesn't match. And some of the people that put like those clips together, I would love to see. Like, go watch Aiden Hutchinson. If you just watch him versus a tackle, or in a game, and see how many times he just wins, and then put it up side by side with Travon Walker, and it's night and day. That's why we say don't look at sacks. Just look at the rusher versus the tackle. with no context beyond that. Watch their interactions and see that Hutchinson wins twice as many, 3 times as many times as Travon Walker right now. That's the point we've been trying to make.
I think at this point, that part of the discussion is completely defunct now. It's moot. It's irrelevant. Like, Aiden Hutchinson over Travon Walker was by far the correct decision. Like, it's not even a conversation. Hutchinson has become one of the most impactful edge rushers in the NFL, and whatever you think of Travon Walker, he's not that. So absolutely it was the wrong decision to take Travon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson. The question that I'm more interested in now is Travon Walker good? Just in a vacuum, forget Aiden Hutchinson and the comparison to him. He's clearly not as good as Aiden Hutchinson. Is he good? Question mark. And I think that's more open to interpretation because you look at the tape and the splash plays are amazing, but there's not enough of them. And we're now dealing with, well, how many of those does he need to make to be good? And how much is he offsetting it by plays like those double team plays where he's getting wrecked? I think the capacity for him to be good, maybe he's not there now, but I think that's a much more open question yet than will he ever be better than Aiden Hutchinson, to which the answer I think is almost certainly no.
The one last thing I'll add is, to his credit, he plays a lot of snaps. Right? He plays a ton of football. And that's kind of the point. I think if you're a Jags fan coming out, be like, oh yeah, I saw Travon Walker make a couple plays today. The context there is the dude plays 50, 60, 65, 70 snaps. He plays a lot of snaps every week. And therefore, like, you should make more plays. Like, It doesn't come off the field very often, to his credit. But when you do that, the expectation is when you rush the passer 37 times, even in a screen-heavy attack, that you should be, winning more or making more of those splash plays, which are incredible when he makes them. Mm-hmm. The other thing, so I just wanted to touch on this quickly. We talked about it a little bit Monday night in the Instant Reaction show, and then Dean talked about it, the state of quarterback play in the NFL, or just the results of quarterback play in the NFL. Coming out of Monday night, officially the lowest passing yard total in a week one in at least 15 years. The lowest passing touchdown total in at least 15 years. I just didn't look further, but it's low. And it's almost half as many passing touchdowns as we saw just 5 years ago in 2019. Now, the inverse of that, and when I put this out on Twitter, a lot of people are like, yeah, QBs are terrible and this and that. The reality is there's more rushing yards than ever when you include scrambles. There is more running arounds than ever. But I have one other ludicrous stat to bring to you. And this is an interesting one and something to keep an eye on. I did look at the PFF database back to 2011 when they started tracking, back then, started tracking time to throw, right? Snap to release. This week featured, and I was just looking at week ones, the highest time to throw, snap to release, snap to the release of the ball, and the lowest average depth of target. So it was literally last in average depth of target since 2011 and literally first highest time to throw, which means QBs are holding the ball longer than ever and throwing it shorter than ever. And I don't think this is an offensive decision by teams, but that's a bad brand of football that is trending in the NFL.
Despite Anthony Richardson out there trying to single-handedly drag that average up.
Imagine, right? If you took the same way, you take Jameis out of the data set and all of a sudden the whole league's more conservative. What if we took Anthony Richardson out of this data set? It's even more extreme.
I haven't looked at, over the last several years of NFL football, what is the average passing yard performance from a quarterback in a game? It's got to be chasing upwards towards 300, right? Like, it's not 300.
Not average,
but like the average has got to be getting in that direction.
It's probably like
now.
220, 230.
I would say it's got to be higher than that. I would think it's
because this week it was like 180 or something.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this has got to be like, this looked like a game. This looked like a stat line from like the 1990s sometime where
which I love the 90s.
Yeah. But like where passing, where a quarterback completing 65% of his passes was witchcraft and anybody topping 300 yards was mind-blowing. Like, the standard was, can you get above 200? And then this became like 300-yard games have become routine. And this week there were 2 300-yard games. And the number of games that were under 200 yards is insane. I can't remember a week that looked like this. Have you got any reasoning behind it? Because I've been asked a few times already, like, what is happening? To me, the two obvious things that I think probably have a factor in there. Number one, there's just a lot of bad quarterbacks starting week one, right? Between young guys it's their very first NFL start and like guys that are in either year 2 or year 3 are coming off Achilles injuries or whatever. Like, there's a lot of things that make sense for quarterbacks to struggle this week. And then number 2, I do feel like this nobody's playing in preseason anymore thing is probably a factor. The old cliche was always defense starts out training camp ahead and offenses catch them up the longer it goes. I kind of feel like if they're not playing at all in preseason, that's probably slowing them down.
I think I want to put those lower on the list. I'm going to say high-end quarterback play. I've said for a while the last couple of years, I think finding a starting quarterback is easier than ever. A guy that you're okay starting right now. But finding like the elite quarterbacks compared to 10, 15 years ago are way lower. I mean, remember the last era. The last era of quarterbacks had 4 distinctly elite quarterbacks with Brady, Breeze, Rodgers, and Peyton. Distinctly elite in their own atmosphere. And then there was a next tier of quarterbacks who you're debating the Hall of Fame for. You know, Matt Ryan and Ben Roethlisberger, and Ben's going to be a Hall of Famer, right? This next tier, Andrew Luck when he was starting, Phillip Rivers, right? You had 8 or 10 legitimately good quarterbacks to the point where Matthew Stafford was probably 11th or 12th in that era. Cam Newton was 11th or 12th in that era. Now you're talking about Stafford being like a top 8 quarterback in this era, and I don't think it's as top heavy. I think when you're listing quarterbacks, everybody puts Mahomes. A lot of people putting Josh Allen. Lamar is up there, right? Burrow might be up there, maybe. But it's not that distinct at the top, right? Dak would have been QB 10 or 11 in the last era. Now is he 6? Is he 5? It is that. So the high end of quarterback plays down. And then the style of quarterback is what I just described. They're holding the ball longer and running more as well. So you are getting more of a run game from the quarterbacks now than you did before. So that's why passing stats, I believe, are down. Across the league, it's a little bit more different style. More designed run game, more scrambles. I would put that near the top, and then the defense part of it. We talked about this all last year. The defenses are playing softer. They're playing more zone. They're taking away more of the big plays. You see a bunch of 10, 12 play drives, and then teams cracking down in the red zone. So I think those have more to do than the QBs are bad, and the QBs and maybe the preseason isn't, preparing people.
Okay. I do think that, there's a lot of bad quarterbacks starting week 1.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I've overrated the ability to find a starter.
Now, look,
so many of them are young, and there's still hope for them,
the counter to that is a lot of the good ones also had passing performances of like 165 yards, right? Like Joe Burrow had 164 passing yards. Aaron Rodgers, coming off an Achilles, 167. Dak Prescott, arguably MVP last year based off his performance, 179 passing yards. So a lot of good quarterbacks also had crappy yardage performances. But, we had a ton of week 1 starting rookie quarterbacks, so that's always – anytime one of those guys is on the field, a 150-yard passing performance is absolutely on the cards. In addition to, Jacoby Brissett, we know is not really a starting quarterback. He's a high-end backup.
Gardner Minshew.
And then the guys we talked about, right? The second-year guys, Levis, Bryce Young, who haven't shown it yet. So
Justin Herbert's being turned into a J.J. McCarthy game manager.
He's being harbawed, so that makes sense. One thing, this isn't in our little rundown, but I wanted to hit it anyway.
You can't go off script.
No, have to. Have you seen people have got miles per hour numbers on Marvin Harrison Jr. for week 1, and it's one of the highest miles per hour numbers that any receiver has posted, on record.
It's one of the what?
Slowest.
You said slowest, highest.
It's one of the slowest, highest miles per hour figures. So maximum miles per hour.
Oh, max speed. I got you. Yeah.
So one of the lowest top miles, there's a better way to say it, lowest top mile per hour numbers registered from a wide receiver. And this is not ball carrying speed. This is at any point during the game. And my question is, so if you didn't have college data, you would look at this and say, well, this is a man that deliberately didn't run a 40-yard dash time. What if he actually runs like a pig? But we have all that college miles per hour data that says he's actually a fast human being. So why did Marvin Harrison Jr. in week 1, despite running some go routes, it's not like he just ran things that didn't get up.
A lot of that's opportunity.
Right, that didn't get up miles per hour. Despite having opportunity, why did he run incredibly slowly?
I don't know. That's concerning, though.
Right?
The other thing I'll say, the college data. So one thing about the college data that we were always using is we don't know if it's better than the NFL's chips in the shoulder pads.
Right.
Because it's using different technology. We don't know how good it is. Now, I think it's pretty good. It correlates pretty highly to 40 times and everything, which is why we said, look, Marvin Harrison Jr.'s average of his top 5 max speeds in college and his max speeds were right up there with the Malik Neighbors of the world. No concern, right? Oh, he didn't run? Who cares? We got game data. But now you've got NFL game data. I mean, is he just out of shape because he didn't do much this offseason? I don't know.
He was 1.3 miles per hour slower than Keon Coleman of 4.6 fame.
Where are you seeing this?
Jetpack Galileo tweeted it, and Seth Walder has sort of further commented on it based off ESPN's information.
The one caveat I'll use, and I don't know if this is even a good defense for Harrison because he ran a lot of routes, as you mentioned, and ran deep. A lot of it is opportunity driven, right? So if you're looking at players' max speeds in week 1, obviously they're going to be higher by week 10 because they'll have more. It's legit opportunities. And that's why, like, the highest ball carriers, like, not only do they run 40 or 50 yards where they have build-up time, it's opportunity driven. All the guys that run the fastest with the ball in their hands every week has a 50-yard run.
Seth Walder's posted this chart of the slowest top speed games since the start of 2023, and there's 1,730 of these. This is like the bottom 30, and Marvin Harrison Jr.'s game ranks within the bottom 30 of this group.
Yeah,
you know, slowest player in one game since the start of 2023 is
Jarvis Landry.
No, it's unfortunately Jonathan Mingo.
Really?
Allen Robinson appears on this list multiple times.
Lost a step.
As does Tyler Boyd, and that one is more of an opportunity thing. I think.
If you're a slot receiver,
right.
That makes sense.
Guess who else appears on this list for the slowest game time?
Quentin Johnston.
No, but you're in the right ballpark. Justin Ross. Sorry, I was thinking Jonathan Ross. That's my bad. I was trying to make a speed thing. Justin Ross, not Jonathan Ross.
Not John.
That's okay.
John Ross is not had
opportunities
either.
Point being, Marvin Harrison Jr.'s game was historically slow as a one-off thing, and that's strange.
No, that was worth a discussion. That's something to keep an eye on. And I also saw clips of him just run the curl that he dropped, and it doesn't look crisp, sharp.
Yeah, I mean that looked fine.
It is what it is.
But that's weird. Like, he's not. If that was Keon Coleman, it would make perfect sense, right? This is somebody who we had data on saying is not necessarily an elite athlete. He ran a 4.6. All the data points are pointing to him being relatively slow. Marvin Harrison's college data says he's fast, and that was not fast.
So the evidence mounting against Marvin Harrison Jr. is he did not run at the combine, did not run at pro day, went through an entire training camp where everybody puts highlight reel film clips out and didn't have any of those. In week 1, he had a drop, only 3 targets, and ran one of the slowest games you'll ever see from a receiver based off that tracking data.
I'm not saying panic. I'm just saying that's a very strange data point that doesn't make a ton of sense based off previous information.
I'm starting to say evidence is mounting that's a bit concerning for the guy that we kept going to bat to. Like, oh, no, he's going to be a good football player. Wait till the game starts.
Yeah.
Not great. All right, we have something very exciting.
Oh, I'm so excited for this.
Up next. Was this your idea?
Yeah.
It's us against the Shouty Shows. We've talked about the Shouty. Explain the Shouty Shows to people.
The Shouty Shows.
Our listeners don't listen to them, right? Hopefully. I know that there's not a lot of crossover. The pie chart doesn't cross over to the Shouty Shows, but just explain to the Check the Mic listeners who these people are.
The pie chart? You mean the Venn diagram?
Venn diagram.
Yeah. The Shouty Shows, think Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless. It's the progression of linear TV into just arguments and making takes louder and more obnoxious and more ridiculous than the last one, because the only way is up. You can't go back and go less over the top after making an over the top claim. You've got to top that. You've got to have a more over the top claim and an even more ridiculous take than the last one. And it's just a never ending arms race of idiocy between loud, obnoxious people who get the broadcast television jobs. We are the antidote to that. I hate that. I hate everything about it, and it drives me up the wall because it means you can't make a take anymore rationally without somebody else already taking it 5 steps further into the land of ridiculousness. Well, we're going to have a segment based off those people.
So we're going to listen to some takes.
For the first time. We have not heard these because you and I don't listen to the Shouty Shows.
We don't listen. We've got Janko and the other producers working hard to find things for us to react to. So let's get to the first take, I guess.
Let's go.
Dennis Allen, I think, argument, worst coach in the league. On the hot seat, their offensive line was second worst in the league, and they didn't generate a pass rush. The Panthers' defense, even last year, though it was on the field constantly, the Panthers' defense was top 5 and 6 in many categories. The Panthers win this game outright, take the points, 24-20.
A lot of confidence behind that pick.
Yeah, okay.
Colin.
So I was wondering right up until the end, like, when was this broadcast? Obviously.
This is leading into the Panthers-Saints game.
Yeah.
I did actually, I got wind of this at some point through Twitter.
Right.
Someone calling out Colin for his aggressive Panthers pick.
I mean, look, week one, there's always weird picks out there, or weird games out there.
This is acceptable right now.
Yeah.
This is acceptable.
This is not too bad. Dennis Allen calling him the worst coach in the NFL is a little aggressive. But it's not. I mean, if this is our standard for Shouty Shows, this isn't too bad.
This isn't too bad, and I empathize with Colin on this one as an off-season Saints hater.
Yeah.
And I was also manufacturing optimism on the Panthers.
Right.
And
That's the critical
I don't want to
part.
completely go the other way after week one, but it was very concerning for both of those things. Either Saints being down and Panthers optimism.
Yeah, that's the critical part, and I'm just scanning our document right now. Yeah, so I had the Saints covering but not winning from what I remember of our show. So, and it was all based off that optimism of Bryce Young, right? Like, year two, we've upgraded his receiving talent, we've upgraded his offensive line, we've upgraded his coach. Everything's better around Bryce Young. We're going to get a better version of Bryce Young, and the Saints aren't that great, so that feels good enough to make this a tight game. Obviously, the takeaway out of week one was none of that is true yet. Jay Gruden said it. There's no evidence yet that we're going to take any kind of step forward. The offensive line might be a little bit better, but Young still looks terrible. The receivers still don't look great right now. And the coaching scheme was getting undressed by the Saints' aggressive blitz packages. Like, they were getting free pressure constantly. So none of that materialized. And another reason where I think calling Dennis Allen the worst coach in the NFL is a little aggressive, but that wasn't too bad.
I'll give Colin a pass for the pick itself. Week one. All right, we got something else, I think, after week one. Let's get to it.
I can't do it anymore. Where you sit there at 1 o'clock, you throw on the game, and watch Daniel Jones attempt to play quarterback. I can't do it anymore. It's year 6. It is year 6. Enough. This is why I hated the pick of Neighbors. It's not Neighbors. They need a quarterback. How many weeks and years do we got to watch Daniel Jones? I'm begging. I can't do it anymore.
All right, well, that's a perfect Shouty Show segment in terms of the volume.
Good.
Volume's there
Good
right
shouting.
from the outset. Solid high-end shouting. Obviously, that was a catastrophe from the Giants.
I kind of stand with Sal.
So there's two parts of it, right? There's number one, how over the top can you get about Daniel Jones and the negativity there? And number two, should they have gone quarterback in the draft as opposed to Malik Neighbors? I think it's perfectly defensible to say we go wide receiver here. We're stuck with Daniel Jones for at least another year. Let's figure out what we can do with him with a wide receiver this time, upgraded offensive line, and then next year, if he really stinks, we'll be in position to draft his successor anyway. As opposed to, do we want QB 5 or 6 in this draft to take over from Daniel Jones week one? And the other flip side of this is we've just been talking about the 96-yard passing performances of these week one quarterbacks that would have been the alternative, right? So that part I think is a bit over the top. The second part was how bad is Daniel Jones relative to everything else that was going wrong? Look, the Giants' defense got absolutely embarrassed as well. Dexter Lawrence may genuinely have been the only thing stopping Sam Darnold completing 100% of his passes, right? He missed 4 throws, I think, and 3 of them were as a direct result of Dexter Lawrence pressures. Yeah. There was one that was broken up by somebody over the middle. Dexter Lawrence is the only thing stopping the Vikings from literally just having everything they wanted in that game. Daniel Jones doesn't control that. Did you see, I forget which Vikings linebacker it was, but they were saying they started to feel sorry for Daniel Jones at some point during the game. That's not great. Brian Flores' defense is also nasty. I mean, they did this to Brock Purdy and the 49ers last year with lesser talent on defense.
Yeah, but the whole point of this is he's not the guy. He's not the guy that's going to lead you to victory.
Right, but this is not.
Now, here's what I would love. Here's the homework. Here's the homework. I want to know Sal's take after wild card round 2022 on Daniel Jones. because we need consistency here. All right? And here, what you're going to get here on Check the Mic is consistency. Because we came out here, let me remind people what this was. The Giants had, a 10-win season, and Daniel Jones tears it up against a terrible Vikings defense, same team, in the playoffs. They win a playoff game with Daniel Jones, which presumably triggered this $40 million contract at the end of the season. I want to hear what the Shouty Shows were saying back then. Oh, Daniel Jones, he's the guy. Look at this. Next to Eli Manning. He proved he could win in the playoffs. Look at this. What a team. Picking apart the Minnesota Vikings. Daniel Jones is the guy. Whereas we probably came on the next day like, dudes were wide open. Still don't trust Daniel Jones. He's probably not going to go beat the Eagles in Philadelphia in the divisional round, which he didn't. They lost 38-7. That would be a nice comparison. Is how many people overreacted to 2022 Daniel Jones where they won a ton of games when the reality was he was like a little bit better then, but he's been the same guy. The one thing Sal nails here is he's the same guy for 6 years, no matter what's happening around him.
I'm not saying Daniel Jones is going to be the guy, but my point is simply that this game is probably going to rank amongst the worst games he has this season. And so going completely overboard on Daniel Jones is a disaster is probably overblown based off week one. Jones.
But I think he's doing it based off of 6 years. I'm just curious to know if how many people on the Shouty Shows in 2022 were like, oh yeah, we apologize. Daniel Jones has been the dude.
It's not even 22. The mistake was the contract, right? The mistake was not
the contract came off of
right.
They won a playoff
but
game.
But they knew that wasn't
good.
Who he was. The mistake was handing him that contract because they wanted to keep Saquon Barkley around on the franchise tag. Daniel Jones was made for the franchise tag that year, which is we had a surprisingly good performance out of Daniel Jones this season. I don't know if he's going to do it again. Let's slap the franchise tag on him and find out.
While we're trying to find our next quarterback.
Right. Instead, they gave him a big money contract. They stuck themselves with him for a few years, and this is the reality.
And we saw on Hard Knocks, Joe Shane was trying to trade up. They were trying to get a quarterback. They were trying to get Drake May. Now, you could argue maybe they should have forgotten about Malik Neighbors and just drafted J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix Jr., whoever else the next quarterback was, because
there you go. Look,
it's got to be better.
Janko's already completed his homework assignment for you. Sal on WFAN from December the 30th, 2022, pre-playoff game. Quote, the Giants with Brian Daboll here, I'm all for it. I just don't think that they're very good. I think that they had a great season, and it's a great accomplishment to get to the postseason. I just don't think they're that good. I like Daniel Jones and his competitiveness. I just don't think he's a great quarterback.
All right.
So kudos to Sal.
So that's before
Didn't go overboard.
That's good. That's good analysis by Sal. So yeah, I stand with Sal on this.
Stand with Sal.
Yeah.
All right. What's our last clip?
I'm looking at Robert Saleh, and I'm like this. What purpose are you serving if your defense can't stop somebody? What purpose are you possibly serving? That's what I peeled away from last night, because he worked there under that coach. If there's anybody that you would think he would look great against, it's that man, because of your familiarity with this system and how they like to do things and their personnel. And we didn't see that last night.
Robert Saleh, head coach of the New York Jets. You didn't stop the 49ers. You're useless.
What purpose are you serving?
What are you even doing here?
So
what is it you do here for the New York Jets?
This is classic Shouty Show work, right? Because this is the kernel of a perfectly reasonable point, which is Robert Saleh, defensive expert, guy who is bringing that defense to the Jets and has done a great job the last couple of years. That defense has been one of the best in the NFL. Got taken to the woodshed by Kyle Shanahan, and his defense was wrecked. And that was really the biggest reason the Jets didn't win that game. So he's correctly identified that's where the buck stops. That's Robert Saleh's failure. His defense, that's what he's supposed to be good at. Kyle Shanahan owned him in that game, ergo they get whooped. Turning that into what is your purpose in this building is classic Shouty Show hyperbole.
Yeah. What have you been doing this whole time?
Like, look at the defense up until that point. It's been amazing, and that's been Robert Saleh's defense.
I mean, if you just waited a couple weeks, you're probably going to get your answer as they play the Titans, the Patriots. Like, the defense is going to look better, is my take. In the last 2 years, the defense was very good.
Right.
Chances are they'll be better.
But you're concerning.
Right. There's like a kernel of truth in there. I want to say one more thing, right? Anecdotally, historically, when you have coaches change teams, who usually has the advantage, the offense or the defense? Because anecdotally, I think back to the Gruden Super Bowl right? Where Gruden goes to Tampa Bay, and they know how the Raiders are going to line up.
Right.
They know the checks, and they had all the answers. And you kind of see, I feel like you see that more, where two people who know the offense, the defense will have more of the advantage there. I feel like this is the other feather in the cap for Kyle Shanahan, is when he goes up against his former coaches who should know the answers, Dan Quinn, Saleh here, when he goes up against his former coaches, doesn't he get the better of them? Most of McVay with the Rams, they've always owned McVay and the Rams, even when the Rams were going to the Super Bowl. Every time Kyle faces his old friends, he ends up with the advantage.
But I think, Kyle Shanahan tends to have the advantage over pretty much every coach. Like, this is one of those things,
but even in situations where historically it goes the other way, like, all right, you can't keep this run, Kyle. All your minions are across the league now. They're going to get you. And no, he gets them every time.
But it's like those things where people pull up, here's the performance of Tom Brady in a given situation. It's like, yeah, because Tom Brady's baseline is like 80% wins, right? He always wins. So Tom Brady in any situation is always going to win.
True.
That's kind of what I feel with Kyle Shanahan. Like, he's one of the best coaches in the NFL. That scheme is still the cutting edge in football right now. It is as good as it gets, and he is the architect of it. So in any situation, he's going to have the advantage, even against a guy who was coaching alongside with him, because he's still the godfather. He's still the guy with the scheme. So, yeah, you're right. It is impressive, though, that he's able to completely destroy these guys. And I think it is concerning that instead of in-game, maybe you would expect or hope that a really good coach in-game, when things are starting to slide against you, would find a counter, find something to change, find a way of clawing it back, and at least stopping the bleeding. It went the other way in this game. We talked about that earlier, right? It went the way that Shanahan wanted it to go, where every time Saleh tried to counter what was happening, he went with the next thing, and he's defending the head, and now he's getting kidney punched. Like, that's the way this game was going. And that's where it's a fair point, right? Like, that's what you're supposed to be doing, and you are ultimately responsible for this defeat individually, more than anybody else probably in the game. Robert Saleh's inability to have that defense where it needed to be is the reason that the Jets lost. However, it's Monday Night Football on the road against what we expect to be probably the best team in the NFC. It's a pretty high bar. Like, the expectation is probably you lose that game. So going from, you're responsible for this, to, do you even serve a purpose in this building? Like, can we just get anybody into this chair?
Anyone else.
Anybody else could run the stairs before the game. We don't need you.
All I heard in that from you was fair point, Stephen A. Smith. That's all I heard.
Fair point, well ruined. Yeah.
Fair point, well ruined. That's
ultimately what he does.
I am very excited for this every single Wednesday. Hearing these things for the first time. I assume the takes will get stronger and stronger as the season goes on.
There'll be some doozies.
Right? We'll get some good ones. So I'm excited for that. But trust me right now, it's time for you to get Factor's No Prep, No Mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. If you have a microwave, I don't. It's 7 minutes for me, guys. But no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great-tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? With 35 new different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll have new flavors to explore. You can crush your wellness goals this month with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. Keep kitchen time to a minimum with no shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. And enjoy this effortless support for your lifestyle. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help manage calories, maximize protein intake, avoid meat, or simply eat well balanced. I won't avoid meat. I got the extra meat.
No.
And I've got one waiting for me for lunch once we're out of here. Can't wait. So head to factormeals.com/SamandSteve50 and use code SamandSteve50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code SamandSteve50 at factormeals.com/SamandSteve50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. All right, we're going to wrap this up with a little quick-hitting mailbag, okay? And we still have some bets rolling in, which we'll accept because there's coffee on the line. I took a look. I took a look at them.
Okay.
We're good.
Have we
All right.
figured out where we're giving them assorted merch that we haven't got yet? Was that what we
merch.
decided?
We need merch.
Okay.
Hopefully soon.
Reminder for the mailbag address.
It's right there. Check the mic at the33rdteam.com. Send those emails. And for our 33rd team friends, if you guys could just have those forwarded to our emails, it'd be great. We could keep an eye on them as well. Number one, will the Vikings make the playoffs? This is from a guy named Ben. I bet you guys a bag of wild rice each that the Minnesota Vikings will make the playoffs.
Wild rice, as in the staple, or is wild rice a brand name of coffee somehow?
I don't know. It might be a drink. I don't know. What is it? I'm assuming it's the grain.
Right. That's less
Starch,
exciting than
grain.
coffee.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, I eat a lot of rice.
Sure.
This isn't that aggressive, but
Not
hey,
so
we'll
much wild
just
rice.
take all these things.
So the bet is that the Vikings do make the playoffs? Is that what he's saying?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they do. So
So you'll take it.
Sure.
All right, let's do it. Number two. This is
ultimately
a little bit more bold.
Yeah. Ultimately, you and I are both right. Still of the opinion that was one of three expected good Sam Darnold games, rather than Sam Darnold is now Geno Smith.
Look, I mean, I've done that just to temper expectations because we've seen it so much. I am still fascinated with more Sam Darnold data points. I liked him 7 years ago. KOC and I coached him back in 2015 at the Elite 11. Right,
You're
we've
one
got a
more game
history.
away from dropping right into the trap.
Me, Nate Tice, Mina Kimes, I might join the Darnold hive once again. I thought he was going to be good
Even
7 years
knowing.
ago. Baker Mayfield's making us look. All of our takes. Mac Hollins, my 2017 draft crush. Look at him.
This is
starting
like-
for the Bills.
This is like the Jets defense. You know what's coming, and you still can't avoid it. You still can't stop it. You know that the Sam Darnold
I have my
collapse
weaknesses.
is coming, and you still can't stop launching right into the trap and saying, no, he's fixed.
I'll still accept the bet with you.
Wow.
Hey, Sam and Steve from D-Chest.
Okay.
Big fan of the show. I bet you all some local coffee from Atlanta. That's ATL, Atlanta. The Seattle Seahawks will win the NFC West. Would love some swag when I win. Congratulations on the new show. Well, D-Chest, we accept. Because I think the 49ers are going to win the NFC West. I have been, look, this whole offseason, I think I've been optimistic about the Seahawks. And I'm more optimistic after week one, the way that defense was flying around. But still think the Niners are going to be the powerhouse there in the West.
Yeah, I mean, I think after week one, both teams are as expected, right? Like, they both got to win. San Francisco's was really impressive. The Seahawks less so, but they still got the win. I think they will be a good team. Their defense was very impressive with their new scheme. So it's kind of where we thought they would be heading into the season, which is the 49ers are the favorites. Seattle could absolutely surprise them, will challenge them, maybe the second best team in that division, and will be fighting for the playoffs. But my expectations would definitely be for the 49ers to win that division.
Yeah, and we accept because it's coffee for swag, and we can handle that once we have the swag.
Nice.
Number three, will the Chiefs miss the AFC Championship game from Phillip? Howdy, Sam and Steve, fading the good doctor with this one. I mean, he's a Panthers fan now.
Contractually speaking, sure.
Yes. The Chiefs will miss the AFC Championship game for the first time in Mahomes' career as starter. I'll for sure send some coffee your way if I lose. Cheers, Phillip.
So this one's kind of aggressive. Normally, if it was any normal team, you'd be saying, well, of course there's a good chance they missed the championship game.
They're literally 100%
right.
hitting
They've
the
never
AFC
not made it, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So I think you have to say, based off that evidence, that they are favorites to make the championship game. So missing it, I guess, would be a surprise, but it shouldn't be. I mean, it's hard to make a championship game, even if you're a really good football team.
It's
Dallas
crazy
has won the second most games in the NFL over the last 3 years and hasn't hit one.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that we're coming out of an era, too, where New England from 01 to 18, they had like 10 straight AFC championships and whatever they were, 16 out of 19 or something ridiculous in there. And it's like, well, that'll never happen again. And then the Chiefs just go 6 straight as they cross over within that same time period.
It's ridiculous.
And so, yeah, you do. I mean, again, you see the impact of the elite quarterback, what that does for your team. So, yeah, I mean, we accept this because they're the most likely team to get a bye and the most likely team to be in the AFC Championship again.
I think workshopping a take off the top of my head, one of the reasons that kind of trend might come in waves. Hey, the Patriots basically make the championship game every time now. And hey, the Chiefs are going to go to 6 straight and counting. I kind of feel like the psychological effect of that starts to compound, like we talked about Dallas, their inability to make that game is now making it incrementally harder to make that game, because every time you fail, it's heavier the next time around, right? That history. And now the opposite works for the Chiefs. They're just so used now to winning. They've created this habit of winning games. Their expectation is when it's close, late in the game, it doesn't matter. We're good. We know how to win this. Contrast that with Baltimore week 1, right? Where it felt like that was their Super Bowl. They were so amped up to try and beat Kansas City because they know they don't do that very often, and because they know Kansas City is the standard. And ultimately that ended up costing them with mistakes, a couple of which were really important parts of losing that game. And okay, it still came down to a toe over the line, but still, the difference in attitude between Kansas City, who treated that game as just like another Thursday, and the Ravens, who were like, this is it, this is everything, and like we're so like hit by the failure that they were denying reality after the game. Like, no, it was a touchdown, definitely. I take all your images away. I'm not interested. It was a score. Like that. That's why Kansas City makes the championship game every year, because they
the psychological aspect.
They're used to it. They know how to make it work, and they're no longer fazed by situations that cause other teams to melt late in the season.
I mean, I think Greg Rosenthal tweeted that out. He's like, the Chiefs are really good and, as he said, really lucky all at the same time. Like every single little play like that seems to go their way. In addition to they create their own luck and they're better than everyone.
But so don't you think? What I'm starting to think now is that psychological element is how you end up making your own luck. Like that was always a cliche that people just said, and I'm not sure how true it was. But now what I'm starting to think is that the calmness that you are able to exhibit by virtue of the experience that you have for having been there and done it already is what enables you to not make a stupid mistake that somebody else makes.
To quote my dad, not exactly a football expert, but he used to always ask me, are the Patriots better than everyone, or is everyone else just bad?
Right.
And I'm like, maybe everyone else is just like, everyone else seems to always make the key mistake.
Right.
The Patriots don't.
And those mistakes
in
isolation can seem lucky. Like you got lucky, this guy made a boneheaded mistake here, right? But if that is a consistent thing that you are able to avoid making those because you're not as rattled as other people, because you've already been to that game, you've already won that game, maybe that's why they appear luckier than other teams.
All right, last one here. Dear Big Goofy and the Grouch.
Yes.
I have a proposal for you, a 2-year bet.
2-year bet?
That means he's locked in. He's locked in to check the mic for at least 2 years here, which
right.
is great. It's good for us. If you accept, I will not inevitably get my free merch until after the 2025-26 offseason. Kirk Cousins, known hater of the spotlight and historically awful in high-pressure environments, will not fare well with a rookie quarterback breathing down his neck in the national spotlight watching the QB battle. Instead, he will fare so poorly that he'll be benched before his second year is over. That offseason being the time when most people marked as the earliest that the Falcons can cut ties with Kirk.
I mean,
I've been hinting at this. I don't know if this came in before the season,
right,
or if this is piling on after week 1. I don't like this part, but additionally, I predict that Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson will be fired due to this. No later than a week after Super. I do not accept that part of the bet, because they are the drivers to the Penix train.
Right.
So they get to drive once Penix takes over. So I don't think that's going to happen. This guy's a Bucs fan, by the way.
Right. We certainly can't take any bet that involves our friend Zach Robinson getting fired. That's not cricket.
We're also 1 week away from having to explain Zach and the scheme and the whole thing.
That's what I was going to say.
Give him one more week, and then we're going to have to be really objective journalists and, go in on him.
Based off week 1, he might win this bet by October.
I mean, I was tweeting during the game.
Kirk Cousins,
when do we see Michael Penix Jr.?
Right. Michael Penix just sitting there on the sideline, ready to go, has Kirk Cousins absolutely melting down to the tune of that performance on week 1. There's only so many games you can take of that before you make a switch. But there's obviously other things at work there as well, like the offensive line getting wrecked by TJ Watt.
So Jay Kincaid here, Bucs fan, as a forfeit, he said, I will wear full Bucs gear, pirate hat, chains and all.
Oh, nice.
To the Dirty Birds nest for the Falcons 2026 home game.
Okay.
So in 26, we're going to see
So it's a slow burn bet, but I like it. Other than the Zach Robinson
He'll
part.
film the whole experience, put up $50 of Savannah, Georgia's finest coffee, Perk Coffee.
Okay.
But he also said this will never happen.
All
Sincerely, right. Jay Kincaid. This excludes injury, but includes Michael Penix Jr. remaining the starter after Kirk is healthy.
Okay,
I think that's
fair.
all. It's all fun.
It's all
Coffee's
reasonable.
on the line. He's going to dress like a pirate. All sorts of good stuff could potentially come out of this. I would just delete the part. We'll just put a big cross off
Right.
as far as friends get it. We don't root for any
No,
friends
getting fired.
getting fired. Not good for us.
I mean, the Kirk Cousins thing is, I think, one of the bigger stories coming out of that first week. He was terrible. We talked about it on our Monday show. I think the biggest mistakes were ones where it came late in the down and it was like he just didn't quite know instinctively where to go with the ball yet. But there was like, you go through his tape and you watch it sort of snap by snap, there's a couple of plays in there that are really concerning in wildly different ways. And and it's like nothing repeats as a, like, a couple of people have tweeted out various plays, right? They're like, oh, look at this. This means his leg's barely there. It's not even functional. That Achilles has ruined him. Hayden Winks from Underdog tweeted out this clip, and it's a really weird play where he just like leaves that back leg dangling in the air, and it's like it looks like he literally doesn't want to put any pressure on it whatsoever, and that's the Achilles leg. And you're like, wow, if that's what he is right now, Cousins can't even play in the NFL anymore. Like, wrap it up, your career's done. That was the one play that he did that in the game, right? Every other snap did not look like that. So that one was weird. I also sent you one where it looked like late career Drew Brees was throwing a simple out route from the near hash and the ball barely gets there. It's like, dude, if that's his arm now, again, wrap it up. We're done here. The career's over. But again, there's other plays in there where he fires the ball in. He had good velocity. There was strength in the arm. That didn't repeat all the way through the game as well. And then you just had this like no bootlegs, rollouts. There were Minnesota games last year where he had basically 1 or 0 bootlegs or rollouts. It's not necessarily a feature of the game every single week, but all these things rolled together ends up with a game that gets like 100 and something yards, and Cousins is a disaster, and we're now talking about how soon can we bench him for Michael Penix.
In addition to the offensive line aspect
Yes,
of it, right?
which is a big part.
You're not only under pressure, but you're under quick pressure.
Yeah.
TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cameron Hayward,
And by the
Deanna
way-
Benton, those guys were good.
Yeah, and if you watched how they were rushing, they were doing it as a team as well. Like, they weren't, one guy wasn't just winning and then leaving him somewhere to scramble to. Like, they were all collapsing it at the same time from a coordinated assault on the pocket. Cousins didn't really have that many opportunities to get out and make things happen because, again, I think that was a Hayden Winks tweet, right? It was the least he'd moved in a game.
Yeah.
Distance-wise.
Yeah,
like
basically the most static
Or he said
quarterback performance.
He had said that it was the least he'd seen a guy move ever. I think somebody else put the number to it, right? Like, based off NGS data, it was literally the least the quarterback had moved around anywhere since whatever. But I don't think that was necessarily a Cousins thing. Like the touchdown to Pitts, he got out of the pocket, scrambled, made the three. And so I think it's all of this lumped together is the problem. It's not like, hey, here's the problem, this thing, fix that, you're good. It's like all of this put together results in this terrible game. But I don't know that any one thing is a fix. Like, you can't just go, oh, here's what we tweak.
We'll talk about it tomorrow. Atlanta goes to Philadelphia for Monday Night Football. Next week, Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs. You know, if they had beaten Pittsburgh, it's like, all right, maybe you start 1-2 and it's okay. It's a tough schedule, but they're staring a potential 0-3 in the face here, given the next two opponents.
Which will really test that whole Michael Penix Jr. thing. I mean, how much do they like him? How invested in Kirk Cousins are they?
The cost is sunk, Sam. The cost is sunk.
But it does, I mean, Ben Solak was writing about this on Monday, now of the ESPN, and he was saying, you know, he hated the Michael Penix Jr. pick at the time. And he was like, well, if they discovered sometime between March and late April that actually Cousins was physically a lot more wrecked than they thought he was, he would have a lot more sympathy with the Michael Penix Jr. pick. I mean, these are the narratives that are going to start to get weaved if Cousins plays like crap and they lose the first 3 games.
Does that mean they didn't do proper due diligence, free agency?
And that's the point. It opens up other questions.
Yeah.
But the point being, we're now in this world, right, where these are the things we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, particularly if they go 0-3, Cousins doesn't look great, and Michael Penix is sitting there on the sideline with this sort of unprecedented confidence in him from the team to take him despite the quarterback, all these kinds of things, right? I'm painting a picture of the next 2 weeks based off who they're playing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole point from that last bet was like Kirk doesn't handle this well.
Yeah.
And we also made that point at the draft, right? When you draft Aaron Rodgers' replacement, you're like, trigger him into MVPs. When you draft Kirk Cousins' potential replacement, you might turtle up.
Right.
And so that's what we're looking for over these next couple weeks. All right, so tomorrow, as always, Thursday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, we're going to be going game by game, previewing every single Week 2 game. We got Bills-Dolphins tomorrow night. They're already getting right into some great games like Al. Al may have made this schedule. It's like, give me some good Thursday night games or I'm not showing up. So his first game, he gets Bills-Dolphins.
I want a steak and the Bills-Dolphins.
That's all he wants. That's all he wants late in his career here. So we'll be going game by game here tomorrow on Check the Mic. Make sure you hit the subscribe button here on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Again, we just appreciate all the support. Closing in on 10,000 followers on YouTube. We're growing. We started from scratch. We're growing, and we appreciate all the people that have come over with us or discovered us new over these last few weeks.
Yeah, some great numbers in the shows on YouTube as well. So absolutely hit the subscribe button, and we are very grateful that you've all come with us, and hopefully there'll be more people along.
All right, we'll see you again tomorrow. More Check the Mic.
Tomorrow more, huh?
More Check the Mic. Tomorrow with more Check the Mic. I went tomorrow, pause. More Check the Mic.
That was like your confusion over my highest, biggest.